Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole and joined that way, my co-host Thomas Falco.
Hello.
I need to line this up one day. Actually, know which way you're going. So we're going to start with. Do we start with Bournemouth or Bristol City?
Bristol.
Let's start with
Bristol City. Yes.
Yeah. So Bristol City have appointed Nigel Pearson as their new manager. I was quite surprised, but actually he's got quite a good track record and he was unlucky to be sacked as Watford boss.
He certainly was, yeah. He sacked with only 2 games to go and they were they outside the relegation places when they sacked him, and then they lost their last 2 games under caretaker manager Hayden Mullins and they went down, if I remember rightly.
They were indeed. It was player power, I think, played a part in his ultimate sacking when he left Watford.
Allegedly, yes, allegedly. Have to obviously say that because we can't afford to be sued, but he has a track record in the Championship. I mean, if you just go through his stats very quickly, he has been appointed to succeed Dean Holden initially until the end of the season, so there is a chance there that he may well get the job beyond that, but obviously that's dependent on quite a few outside factors as well as what goes on the pitch. He had an immediate impact, even though he hadn't taken charge technically, had he, for the midweek game, but there we go. It's his 9th spell as a manager, if you disclude his spells as caretaker manager at West Brom, England under-21s and Newcastle. He's been with Carlisle, famous for keeping them in the league, with Jimmy Glass, if you remember that, Paul, back in the day, of the goalkeeper who scored in injury time.
Yeah, they still play that clip.
Yes, they do. And Jimmy Glass still works in football as well. The last I heard, he was with Bournemouth as player relations, so hopefully he's still there. Southampton, Leicester, twice, obviously. Hull, Derby, bit left field. Louvain in Belgium, he's been with recently. And Watford, overall, from the 497 games I found on Wikipedia, basically, 40.85% win rate, really, as a manager, which is not bad, is it, for someone who's been in the game for as long as he has, experienced manager. And I just wanted to make a point, because I've made a note here, Paul, and I don't want to seem like I am against older people getting jobs in football, because I am really not, but you'll understand the point I'm trying to make in a minute, and I'll be interested to see if you agree. He's 57 years old, which doesn't matter, obviously, but he is the oldest manager that Bristol City have appointed since 2013, when they had Sean O'Driscoll in charge, who I believe was a very similar age. Now, I don't say that as an ageism thing. I say that because we talked about in the last podcast how Bristol City have been appointing sort of younger, up-and-coming type of head coach figures rather than going for the traditional managers. And
we talked about the League One managers that are currently doing a good job as well. And we, on the managerial merry-go-round, Nigel Pearson wouldn't have been a name that I'd have picked off, to be honest.
No, it come from a bit left field considering he's been working in the Premier League, but Bristol City are an ambitious club and that's good, but then Bristol City and the league can attract managers of Nigel Pearson's calibre. The point I was going to make regarding the age is we've seen this season teams are starting to go for the more established and experienced managers, and it's garnered good results so far, hasn't it? If you look at what Mick McCarthy's doing at Cardiff, we've waxed lyrical about him over the past few podcasts, and Chris Hughton at Forest as well, a bit of a slow burning effect he's having there. Neil Warnock at Middlesbrough, and obviously previous jobs as well. It's people say about the older managers taking over from the younger people not coming through, but they're tried and trusted and their methods work. And for these short-term firefighting spells, it's a great appointment all round, really, isn't it? If you get someone there to the end of the season, if that's not a success and they just finish where they are at the minute, both parties can move on and go to wherever they want to go.
His profile fits. I think Nigel Pearson, he's been successful. I don't see him as a failure in any of the roles that he's taken on.
No. I mean, if you look at the job he done at Watford, what could he do other than finish in 17th place with Watford? Because that's a club who went through managers like nobody's business in that particular season. He has been promoted from the Championship with Leicester. I've got the figures here. He was 2013-2014 he won promotion with Leicester, and he lost his job at the end of that season, didn't he? And we all know what happened after that when Claudio Ranieri took charge. He is a very I wanted to say hard line, but I don't mean that. He doesn't appear to take any nonsense, does he? And maybe that's what Bristol
certainly
City
when you look
need.
at some of his press conferences, he certainly doesn't suffer fools gladly. I think is the best way to describe him.
He'll
I
go
think
into Ashton Gate.
Treaded a fine line at times. He's treaded a fine line in terms of some of the stuff he says. I think there's some great sound. He's great for a soundbite. I think it would have to be said, but I think he's almost, the look about him almost pigeonholes him as the type of manager you expect him to be. But I would say he plays quite progressive football. I think he gets the players on side. I think you're right. No, the no nonsense sort of demeanour around him, and maybe that's what Bristol City need to stop them being so flaky.
Yeah,
it is a manager that's going to sort of be a bit authoritative, and hey, Bristol City look good midweek.
following on from a point we made last week in the pod, I think it's the right move to go for someone of his ilk, because we look at the progression from Lee Johnson to Dean Holden, where Dean Holden was already at the club while Lee Johnson was there as assistant, and obviously moved up to the head coach position. Maybe having, as we said, freshening up, new ideas, maybe a more hardline approach could certainly have an effect on a very talented squad of players who are in a decent enough position, because that part of the league is quite compressed, isn't it? I think compact, compressed. They're
The
quite
season's
close
not
together.
over for Bristol City, even though they are a good number of points. I could probably get the points up, but they are a good number of points off of that, of where they'd want to be. You know, they're sort of 7 or 8 points off. But given how this season is, given how many games there are still to play, a decent run. And on the flip side, when you're not going as bad, when things are not going as bad, it isn't loss after loss after loss. It's draw, win, draw. If a run of form is that consistency rather than loss, I actually think Bristol City are in a good shout, and I think Nigel Pearson's a man to get better from that group of players. The club we're going to move on to next, Bournemouth, were another team that parted company with a long-standing manager.
Well, not a long-standing manager, long-standing person at the club, because he was sort of coach.
No,
Wasn't
I'm
he,
talking
before
about
that?
Eddie Howe.
Oh, sorry, I apologise.
They went from a long-standing manager who had pretty much built that club to where they were, and then they picked someone who was very affiliated to that style of that kind of philosophy, that style of play, and it could have gone right. It goes right often, you know. Bournemouth, I think, or not Bournemouth. Brentford are an example of a consistent theme working through. However, with Bournemouth's case, it was they needed something different and they needed something fresh, and they've gone with Jonathan Woodgate to the end of the season.
Yes, and that's a very interesting move considering the names they were linked to. I mean, the type of
Patrick
names.
Vieira and Thierry Henry both were seemingly passed over.
Yes, and interesting to see that Thierry Henry's actually left his job with Montreal, isn't he, in the last few hours as well? But that's cited for family reasons. He's moving back to London, so there's a lot of speculation on sort of social media and in the press regarding that. But it's because he wants to be back with his family, which is perfectly understandable, I would imagine. Well, it is perfectly understandable. It is good that Jonathan Woodgate has got the chance until the end of the season, because he's obviously a highly regarded coach. It didn't quite work out at Middlesbrough. He says that part of the reason it maybe didn't work out at Middlesbrough, as well as obviously the style of play changing quite dramatically from the more direct Tony Pulis approach to the more expansive style that he was brought in to achieve, is he didn't have much experience in his backroom staff. Today he's rectified that by bringing in Joe Jordan, which is a very, very shrewd move, although he was involved in Middlesbrough at some capacity with him, but a very shrewd move. Gary O'Neill's also come from Liverpool, I believe it was. He's a very good player. Was he Portsmouth? I remember him playing for Portsmouth in the Premier League. So he's obviously got his own backroom staff there. And again, very similar comments to Bristol City. Bournemouth do have the quality in their ranks to be able to push back up, but their rate of fall at this moment in time over the last few games has been quite alarming, hasn't it? And Jonathan Woodgate has arrested that to a certain extent. I believe as caretaker manager was 7 points out of a possible 12 he got as a caretaker. I think it's the right move. Don't want to speculate why they have done that, whether it is because of they want to wait for someone to be free in the summer or something like that. But it is the right move for the stability of the club, isn't it, and giving them the best chance. Because again, this is going to sound quite ridiculous, really, as I say it, because Jonathan Woodgate's not been long there himself. But if they were to get another new manager in, who then has to take time to work out what type of players he's got and this, that, and the other, Bournemouth's season could be over. So keeping that stability there
Jonathan
to a certain
Woodgate's
extent.
less of a risk than Thierry Henry or Patrick Vieira.
Yeah, and
Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira have done nothing in their previous limited managerial careers to say that they are going to go in and be a better manager, coach than Jonathan Woodgate.
Yeah,
what Jonathan Woodgate has over them is championship experience with Middlesbrough. He would have taken away from that in. He knows how this league works. He knows how to set his teams up. He would have taken a year's worth of experience of managing Middlesbrough, and he can adapt that. That's over Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry. The other thing he's got is he's already in there, as you said, embedded with that group of players, working with them. He's already 3 or 4 steps ahead of those. So why would you pay, and I'm going to say this now, Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry would command a bigger wage than Jonathan Woodgate. They would also garner more eyes on Bournemouth, so that would be balanced out, but it still comes with an element of risk, more so than Jonathan Woodgate. Let Jonathan Woodgate take the season. If they go up, yay. If they don't, well, you're not really you wouldn't have guaranteed that anyway, and then you can review it, and I would guess there will be more experienced managers on the merry-go-round that you could probably pick from.
Yeah, that's nothing against Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira as well. It's just that they have it to prove, don't they? And they will get their chance in English. They will get their chance in English football at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I think it is the less calculated risk, isn't it, in going for someone who's already in the club than going for someone who's maybe got to take time to adjust and work out what type of players he's got in his squad.
Absolutely. I mean, Jonathan Woodgate, if you just took his Bournemouth spell as caretaker manager, is more experienced than Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry at this level put together, and I think that in itself speaks volumes. So, but really sensible decision from a club that is run sensibly. You know, we talk about the 100 million that Eddie Howe had to spend in their last season.